You're listening to Confessions of a Counselor podcast. Here we will talk all things mental wellness. Hi everyone, it's Janice here, and welcome back to Season 4 of Confessions of a Counselor. So this is our first podcast of Season 4, so welcome back. And today I thought this season we would continue to kind of talk about some of the philosophies and the things that I discuss in therapy. So I thought talking about the what I call the walk back process would be really helpful when remembering how change happens and why we do things to create change that can be really helpful in the process of figuring out what it is that we want to change and how we want to do that. So when it comes to implementing a skill or a tool that we're going to use in therapy or most likely outside of the therapy session, I talk about what I call the walk back process. So oftentimes we'll talk about a skill and let's use the pause button as an example. So we'll talk about the pause button. We'll say, okay, when you're feeling anxious or scared or worried, you're going to get your feet on the ground and take 3 deep breaths. Now, what happens in our brain is that when we're feeling well, we can say, oh yeah, of course, I'm going to use the pause button when I'm not feeling well. But what we remember is that when we're not feeling well, our lids flip and we start to lose access to our skills, right? That logical part of our brain that tells us, hey, do something. And so we forget to use our skills, and then I'll have clients come back to session and be like, man, I did not do that homework. I didn't use that skill at all. I feel like I had no access to it. Oftentimes people will feel really, really bad. And so one of the things that I find really helpful to remember is to use the skill whenever we remember it. So, for example, on Tuesday night, you got very anxious. You had a fight with your partner, and the anxiety skyrocketed through the roof. Tuesday night goes on. You continue to have the anxiety. You forget to use the pause button. That's fine. Wednesday afternoon, you're starting to feel a little bit better, and you go, oh, Janice told me to use the pause button to help me feel better when I was feeling really anxious. That's the moment. That's the moment where you're going to use the skill. So in that moment, you're going to remember the pause button, and you're going to get your feet on the ground, and you're going to take 3 deep breaths. What's happening here is that we're starting to train our mind to use this skill. So most likely what's happened is your brain has reattached enough, so your lid has unflipped enough that you now have access to your skills. And that's the moment where we want to start to integrate. So we're going to start to use that skill whenever we remember it. And eventually, over time, we're going to be able to use that skill closer and closer and closer to the event where we're feeling that feeling, or when we need to be using that skill, and it's going to help us feel better. And sometimes with a skill like, say, the pause button, we're actually going to be able to use that skill before the event actually happens. So we can stay calm, we can stay regulated, we can be within our window. So this walk back process is really important, is that every time we remember to use it, whether it's several days later or several minutes before, we're going to start to use that process and walk ourselves back, if you will, to the moment where we need to be using that skill. But if we just say, well, I didn't use that skill, I'm never going to be able to use this skill, that skill wasn't helpful, then we're never going to be able to integrate it into a part of what it is that we do. So I do like to remind my clients now of that walk back process so we can start to use skills in a different way and really start to integrate them. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Confessions of a Counselor podcast is available anywhere you like to listen to your podcast, both on Apple and Android. New episodes will be released every Friday. If you enjoyed this podcast, please feel free to join the conversation. Leave a review or subscribe to the podcast hosted on the Anchor app. All these details can be found at janicelyons.com. Until next time, take care.